Well, it's winter in Alaska. It's a magical time when bears hibernate, birds fly south, and we do home improvement projects.
Oh shit! I'm not tired. What? I'm not tired. I have no time for that. Ain't nobody had time for that. All right. Welcome to another episode of... Oh. Sorry. All right, well, welcome to another episode of Alexander Out There. I'm Alexander, and, well, I'm not exactly out there at the moment. Well, we're here in the early throes of winter, and so that means not a lot of mining's going on at the moment. But that doesn't mean that we're not thinking about the gold and telling stories about it. And that's why when I was approached by a friend of mine who was filming an interview for one of his new projects with a local mining legend, I jumped at the opportunity because I knew that there were going to be stories that were going to be told that were second to none in mining lore. I put a link in the description for his new project that we filmed this interview for. So go check it out. So the legendary miner that I speak of is none other than Mark Sebens. And you may recognize Mark from such television shows as Discovery Channel's Gold Rush and Gold Rush Whitewater. As of late, he's appeared quite a number of times in the Whitewater episodes this season. And I have no doubt you're going to be pretty entertained with the story that he has to tell this evening. Also, stick around to the end of the video, not because I need the click-through rate, I mean that's nice, but because he also shows off some of his finds from his own gold claim up on Porcupine Creek. So, okay, I'm back at it, but enjoy.
So, basically what occurred was on Porcupine Creek, after the first couple of years, all the relatively easy gold that could be found was found. I mean, with so many people around, and the whole creek was claimed up, also up McKinley Creek and Cahoon Creek, which are tributaries that run into Porcupine Creek. Then it was kind of time to bring in, the individual miners, like the four of us here, we could go out with picks and shovels, and we could only move so much material and could only find so much gold, basically. So many of the miners, said, okay, to heck with this. They would sell their claims. At one point, there were several different companies that worked on the Porcupine Creek. They built a very large flume, which was the largest flume in North America at the time. It was 8,000 feet long, 30 feet wide, 8 feet high. And a flume is what would carry, they would put the whole Porcupine Creek through the flume, and then they would be able to mine on the other side of it. It got destroyed several times due to just high waters, floods, boulders, and stuff like that coming down. Then there was a short period of time, several years, I think in the early 20s, where not much was happening at all. A gentleman who was a miner as well as a businessman from Minneapolis, St. Paul. His name was August Fritchie, and he bought up most of the claims on the Porcupine Creek. And he gathered together investors from the East Coast, and he came up to Haines, and they built what is a highline flume, which was to run water from McKinley Creek down so that they could run their sluice boxes, etc. And he repaired the main flume, the big flume, and I think they had, for 10 years, they worked from 1926 to 1936. And the records say that they found like $1.4 million worth of gold. Of course, at that time, that's quite a bit of gold. So then it was in 1936, August Fritchie, who was the manager, he, last day, they did the final cleanup, and he took $25,000 worth of gold back to his house, which was the manager's house. And, he's got a safe there, supposedly putting it in the safe. The next day, they come to find him, and he's dead. He died of a heart attack. And they're like, oh my gosh. Okay, so they opened the safe. I think one or two other people in the company there knew the combination of the safe. They opened the safe, there's no gold. And are like, okay, what happens now? So they literally dug up all around, they looked everywhere, dug up around his house and could find nothing. The investors basically, they had to sell the mining equipment, et cetera, to pay their debts, and probably went more into debt themselves. And people so this is in 1936, and people would come up and they heard the story, and they would look around, and eventually, I mean, even people with metal detectors, I think, came, but there was so much metal out there at the time, it pretty much impossible to find anything. And it was just a big mystery. There were individuals that, would go mine at Porcupine, your lonesome prospector or something like that. And this one gentleman, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name, I'm going to call him Joe. Joe comes out there, and Joe, he would just go mine up and down, prospect up and down the Porcupine Creek during the summer, and then I don't want to call him homeless, but somewhat, because he would basically squat in one of the cabins or something like that there. Well, he was squatting in the manager's cabin, and this is the early 50s. And then Joe would go into town, he'd ski into town or whatever during the winter for supplies and this and this and that. Some friends of his I think it was 1953, they're like talking, it's like, hold it, we haven't seen Joe for several weeks. Anybody got any idea what's happened to him? And they're like, no, maybe we should check on him, see what's going on. And so several of them came out to Porcupine looking for Joe, couldn't find him anywhere. All his stuff was there. He had left his, his bedroll and his pack and all this stuff, and his mining supplies, prospecting supplies. And he had been living in the manager's cabin, which was really like, it was a 2-story house. I remember when I first came to Haines seeing this. And so this is 1953, but they couldn't find Joe. Well, one of the things that Joe had been doing was he was tearing off the inside boards of the walls to feed the fireplace to keep himself warm. And they were looking around, and they found where he had torn off underneath the stairwell. And inside there was a shelf, and it had 4 big dust rings, about yay big. So just about the size of a quart jar. And so they're like, oh my God, Joe found the doggone gold that Fritchie had hidden. And then he took off, and he left everything. And I think it was about 6 months later that a local here got a postcard from Panama that said, I'm doing fine, Jay. So there was some treasure there. And I'm certain there's more treasure out in that area, so.